Hello, welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage, on a beautiful Sunday morning, kind of chilly, 2nd of March, 2025. I came out to continue working on my SFI cased Powerglide, the BTE case, bellhousing and tailhousing. And it's been way too long putting it together, but in this video, I'm hoping we finish it. First thing I did this morning was check and set my end play. I have a Torrington bearing in every position. The JW clutch drum that I bought was machined for a Torrington bearing. So that just leaves me with space I need to take up on the back of my pump. I didn't know if I'd have to machine anything, but I didn't. With 2 shims, I was able to establish about 12 thousandths clearance end play, which you saw the picture. I have just the back half of the pump, the stator half of the pump bolted in the case. Have the dial indicator set up, and you just pick up and down on everything. So there's some talk, if you read the forums, I belong to most of the transmission forums, that if you apply high gear, if there's any play between the gear that's in the high clutch drum and the snap ring, when you apply high gear, it could take away your end play. So I wanted to check that too. It's an interesting theory. I've always done it without worrying about that, which is how the book's written, but hey, it's a theory. So to air test the Powerglide couldn't be any simpler. That's reverse. You can watch the clutches apply. You can measure your rear clutch clearance right through that window right there. Couldn't be any simpler. The low gear servo, air's right there. You put air to it, you're gonna watch it move. High gear, you're blowing that hole right there. The only problem is, I, like a good boy, glued my Teflon rings on the back of the pump, the sealing rings that are gonna allow oil eventually to travel through the pump and into the high clutch drum, which is rotating on the back of the pump. So I stuck the seals in like I always do. I put petroleum jelly, pack the groove tight, squish the Teflon ring right into it. So when I slide the pump in, I don't ruin that. The problem is now it's stuck. It's not gonna seal. If you went ahead and put it right in the car, by the time you add oil, start the engine, things are rotating gently. You don't even know when that lets loose and starts sealing, but if you want to air test it, kind of fits right into the air testing we did on this transmission hanging right here. If you're patient and try it a few times, in my case, I come out this morning, I only had like 50 pounds on my compressor. Normally I have 175. So I blew in the high clutch hole, and all I got is air leaking out. So now I'm thinking, oh my God, I got a torn seal. It's not going to work. It's going to haunt me for a long time until I hear it go ka-clunk, ka-clunk. So I said, wait a minute, let's just think this through. So I've done this a million times, but you have to go through all the emotions. And just spin it a few times, keep applying it. Next thing you know, I hear it start sealing. And now I have high clutch apply. So let's just do that. Oh, and to finish my thought, I tried both checking my end play, holding the high clutch applied, or just simply spinning it, and there's no difference in rotation. So I don't believe I have anything moving of any great amount that's going to affect my end play with the high clutch applied. So reverse. You can watch it move right there. Low gear. And high gear. And I can apply it. Doesn't affect my hand play one bit. I've been moving it back and forth, so. With 12 thousandths end play, and I have Vaseline to hold the shims in as well, which kind of makes your end play feel not as much as it was. Yeah, trust me, she's good. So with the bearings everywhere, you don't want a lot of end play. You don't want things moving around to beat up your shims. The bearing will take it probably, more than the thin shims. You want to keep everything in place. So here's the deal. If the drum was machined where this shelf had play with the snap ring in, and this could move like this with the high gear clutches applied, it could affect your end play. Something to watch for, I guess. I just spent the better part of an hour outside digging through the snow to get the storage box open, looking for a few last trinkets. I needed this detent roller spring, the detent roller itself, the clip that holds on the valve body, a manual valve. I had already cleaned up the servo tube and the rooster guide that's going to bolt on like that. I had already found the rooster when I assembled the case. The bearings I mentioned in the last video, there's a handful of stuff that I wish came with all the common parts you buy, but they don't. So you have to be aware you might get hung up when you go to assemble it and not have everything you need. So fortunately, I had buckets of parts, just took lots of searching, and now I can install a valve body. I like that this valve body does not use gaskets here and here. Makes it a lot easier to service down the road. I also like to use different colored bolts to hold the valve body on. That way when you go to take it back off, you know exactly which one's gonna hold it on. Seems pretty simple when they're all silver and you're in a hurry and you're not thinking, well, it's just easier that way. As far as the trans brake itself, you have a valve and a spring. Gotta go up through the what used to be the modulator hole. Gently. And now you put a gasket on the solenoid and thread her in the hole. Then find a big wrench to bolt her up, which I'll go do right now. Also, while I'm digging for stuff, I have a pair of filter gaskets. I just need to go find my filter and spacer. There's a spacer that comes with a deep pan, so you can space the filter down and install the deep pan. My Dash 16 Jegs AN wrench happens to fit perfect. I continue to make a mess and keep spraying everything with, in this case it's 336 CRC, like WD-40. I just don't want all this to rust while it's sitting around. So if it's coated with ATF or anything that's not going to harm the transmission, this stuff just kind of dries to a anti-rust protectant. This is an FTI filter, no different than a stock filter. It's a mesh, you can wash it. I have a Moroso gasket. I'll give it a shot. This is a spacer I was talking about that I'm going to need. And again, you need 2 filter gaskets. If you buy a filter kit, it's only going to come with 1, so you got to have a couple. And the pan itself is, I think it's a Transmission Specialties. I honestly don't remember. But it's heavy duty for sure. All right, let me jam that stuff on. All right, the filter's on. The pan came with all the hardware required, such that it is not fancy, but it'll get you there. I have coated everything with rust preventative. I like to run the shifter through its paces. That nut's not tight. This shift shaft has an interchangeable bracket for whatever shifter you have. Early Powerglide stuff was welded. Subsequent aftermarket shifter arms are welded. You have to take the whole thing apart and change it inside the case. Take the whole shaft out. This style, you can change it like a T350 or 400, etc. So that's low gear, high gear, neutral, reverse, park, snaps into park. I like to leave stuff in neutral, so I'll be spinning the shaft a few more times probably. My Moroso gasket, which fits really nice over the studs. I like that. Let's say it lines up. Genuine Moroso says right on it. I've cleaned out the pan. Has a magnetic drain plug with a white nylon washer, which I like. I got to tighten that, so mental note, don't let me forget. Look one more time. In my other Powerglide video, I had forgotten to put the servo tube on, and you guys didn't tell me. I found it in the same episode, but at least it stimulated some comments. So feel free to comment. Yes, I think I have everything installed. Let's put the pan on. Feels and sounds nice and flat. I also like that this pan came with traditional flange bolts. I love flange bolts. And Allen head stuff is cool until you're on the side of the road and you don't have enough Allen sockets. So let me jam all this on and we'll flip it over. We're gaining so close. I personally will not ground one half of the solenoid to the pan and then expect ground to magically happen and complete the circuit. If you feel the need to ground it to a pan bolt, at least run another wire over to the chassis or the chassis harness or the battery or somewhere, so you're not expecting, the circuit to go through the front pump bushing, the rear tail housing bearing, whatever. You want a dedicated ground to your engine and transmission. But on a stock case, the early ones had a rear pump. Push starting a vehicle, with an automatic transmission. Everybody up to that point in the early 60s had drove a standard transmission vehicle. They used to jump starting a vehicle if they needed to. So early automatic transmissions had that ability. You had a rear pump that would spin with the drive shaft, make a connection to the engine, allow you to actually start the vehicle, believe it or not. So early Powerglide cases would have cavities back here for that. Later ones get rid of the rear pump, but there's still a lot of stuff going on back here. The trans brake kit comes with a blank plate that you would sandwich in between that and your output shaft support to block off the holes. Now, this being an aftermarket case, my reverse circuit is large, which you have to enlarge a stock one, but this one's already large and it's already completely self-contained inside the case. Nothing back here I need to block off. So I can just still use a stock gasket. I've chosen a roller support. This has a roller bearing in the back of the case as well. I also have a roller tail housing. It's a BTE, came with the whole package. Case, bell housing, roller tail housing. The bearing's actually held in with a snap ring. This is a heavy duty, nice tail housing. So I'm gonna find some bolts for this. Lube up the bearing, bolt that on. The circumference of this holds up the quad ring for the tail housing seal, and bolt that on as well. Be right back. I should also mention, in stock form, there's this little baffle that would go onto this drain that drains back into the case. It doesn't fit these aftermarket supports very well. I think it was only relevant when the governor was spinning out oil. Probably, for whatever reason, they thought they should baffle that. I have no oil exiting the output shaft, spinning anyway, so at least not like the governor would. So I'm not going to bother. Sometimes I do, but I'm not going to bother bodywork that to make it fit. I think it's probably useless at this point. So another piece we get to leave out. Can you believe it? It's finally done. I cannot give you a good excuse as to why it took me 2.5 years to put the thing together. Kind of like my Model A, it's just a crying shame that some projects fall into a crack and there they sit. The dipstick is made by BTE, which made the bell housing, the case, and the tail housing. It took quite a bit of tweaking to make the bracket fit. I currently just have a nut on a bolt holding it in place. I don't know what engine's going to be ahead of it, whether I put a helicoil in there to use a small bolt or not. LS, traditional Chevy, because I'd use them all except for that one. The Cool Line fittings, -6 AN by 1/4 inch pipe, NPT. The case is pipe thread. I put a 1/4 inch DOT A-line quick connect here for the vent. This 1/8 inch pipe plug came in the case, just had to seal it. On a Powerglide, you can get low gear pressure, reverse pressure. You could monitor the charge pressure out of the lower cool line. There's no good place to read mainline pressure, but these two would give you a pretty good idea. I mentioned it has a roller bearing tail housing, means you you need a hardened yoke made for a roller bearing. They're also a few thousand smaller than a regular yoke, I believe. So finally done. It's exciting. A perfect application for this Powerglide would be the 47 Ford truck with the 496 big block, 410 Dana. This would be a nice compact application. Had to cough. You may notice it's dark out. I don't know if you can see my windows, but earlier in the day I was going to take some Dayquil because I have a cold, and it was outdated and tasted funny, so I took some NyQuil. Boy, I had about a 3-hour nap. That's probably helpful, but I did manage to come out and finish this project. And now I can move on to something else. This one's not hanging over my head. Ridiculous that it took this long. I should be embarrassed, but it's just the way it goes. So hope you had a great weekend, and I'll catch you in a couple of days.